The story begins with a man named Frank Vega. Frank had seen a very bad time in his life. He had fought in a dangerous war called Vietnam for a long time, where living alive was not a small thing. Anyway, one day he was going in a bus peacefully, when suddenly when he grew up, he fell in love with a girl and promised his girlfriend that he would marry her as soon as he returned from the war. But unfortunately, Frank had to live in Vietnam for 10 years. Finally, when he returned home, he found out that his girlfriend had married someone else, and now he had 2 children. Seeing this, Frank's heart was broken, and he was very sad. Anyway, Frank had experience in the army, so he thought of joining the police. But for some reason he did not get a job. Then he looked for a job in other places, but he was unsuccessful every time. In the end, he had to live with a cart of hot dogs in his hand. It had been many years since he had worked hard like this. But then one day, a new and beautiful hot dog truck came in the city, with which Frank's business was completely ruined. All his customers started buying hot dogs from that beautiful truck. Now he had no other way but to roam around without a house and a job. In the current times, not only that, Frank and his mother were invited to a talk show where he was given the right to his rights after so many years. But his mother died 3 months later. Finally, Frank started living alone in his mother's house with his dog. One day, Frank's friend Washington came to meet him. He gave Frank a pen drive and told him to keep it in his mother's locker. Frank didn't know what was in the pen drive, but he kept it in the locker on Washington's request. Frank was alone, so Washington started staying with him in his house. One night, Washington went out to buy a cigarette, but 2 goons named Sebastian and Terrence came to him and started demanding his pen drive. Washington told him that he didn't have a pen drive, but the goons shot him in anger. Even then, Washington didn't agree, so he fired a shot and killed Washington and ran away. When Frank got news of his close friend's death, he immediately went to see Washington's body. He was shocked by this incident, and he asked the police to catch the murderer as soon as possible. A few days later, Frank's friend Malak, who was a police officer, came to meet Frank. Malak made him believe that the police department is trying their best to catch Washington's murderers. But later, when Frank was watching the news, he saw that the police had solved the rest of the cases very quickly. Frank was very angry at the police for killing his friend. Frank decided to find the killers himself. First, he reached the car where the Washington murder took place. After some investigation, he found some empty bullets and a locket with a picture of a woman. Frank thought it could be a clue, so he took the bullets and the locket to the pawn shop. The shopkeeper told him that this locket belongs to a man named Terrence, and this woman is his wife. Frank went straight to his house when he found out about Terrence, but Terrence was not at home, and his wife told him that he hasn't been home for a week. Frank returned the locket of that woman and asked him where Terrence could be found. Terrence's wife told him that he often plays basketball with his friends in a park. Frank immediately went to the park where many boys were playing basketball. Frank asked him about Terrence, but instead of talking properly, the boys started making fun of Frank. This raised Frank's bar, and he beat everyone one by one. Actually, they were all Terrence's friends. When Frank asked him about Terrence again, he said he didn't know where Terrence was, but then he told him that a boy named Ronaldo could be aware of him, because he is Terrence's best friend. Finally, Frank reached Ronaldo's house where he met Ronaldo's roommate. He told Frank that Terrence has gone to a bar. When Frank reached there, he met some goons who started teasing him that the old man should leave or he would break his bones. But Frank broke the bones of those goons. Finally, he found Ronaldo, and Frank hung him from the balcony and asked him where Terrence was. Then he found out that Terrence is with a girl named Tanya. After this, we see a Mafia gangster named Panther. Here Panther was talking to a minister named Major Williams. Williams wanted Panther to find the pen drive from anywhere, because actually inside that pen drive was a letter of Williams' evil deeds. Earlier, Washington was working for Panther only, but then he left the gang and betrayed Panther and stole Williams' pen drive. Frank was on the mission to find Terrence, and then his neighbor Martin helped him. Martin said that he should find out what was in that pen drive. Frank went to a massage parlor to meet Tanya, where Tanya worked. Frank asked her about Terrence, but Tanya didn't tell her much, so Frank decided to follow Tanya at night. He hid and entered Tanya's house, where he finally found Terrence. Frank beat him very badly and asked him who was behind killing Washington. But Terrence was also very ideal, and he didn't open his mouth. Frank brought him to the kitchen and threatened to set him on fire. This plan worked, and Terrence told that Washington made a big mistake by messing with a gangster named Panther. The pen drive near Washington had very powerful evidence against the Mafia and William. Then Terrence gave Frank the address of Panther. But before Frank faced Panther, he went to his house to prepare. Then he heard screams from Martin's house. Martin's mother, Amber, was very upset with her drunk husband. He often drank and beat and harassed Amber. At that time, Frank came in the middle and saved Amber's life. Amber was happy with Frank's bravery and called him to dinner to thank him. Frank also took advantage of this opportunity, and without wasting time, he came to Amber's house in nice clothes. After dinner, they both came very close to each other, and they were about to kiss each other, but suddenly Martin came there. Frank called Amber to stay at his house for his and Martin's safety. The next day, Frank gave the pen drive to his friend Malik and went to find Panther. Panther got the news that Frank was coming to kill him, so he ordered his gang to kill him if he didn't bring the pen drive with him. When Frank entered, the Panther gang was angry with him, and they killed him. Then he tied Frank and started torturing him so that he could tell him the address of the pen drive. He even gave Frank a shock, but Frank was no amateur. Despite such a terrible pain, he didn't open his mouth. Seeing this, Panther got angry and took out Frank's wallet, in which he found Frank's address. Seeing this, Panther was very happy, because now he can torture Frank's family too. Here his gang was giving a shock to Frank, and there Panther started going towards his. But in a few moments, Frank freed himself with a big skill and threw a matchbox into the oil tank. This caused a huge explosion on the entire tank, and the Panther also ran away. But Frank was not going to leave him so easily. They ran into the bus and then started chasing each other. Finally, the two of them collided, but Frank still didn't stop, and he started running after the Panther. तभी रास्ते में उसे वही दो लफंगे मिल गए जिनको उसने बुस में पीता था. अब इन लफंगों ने भी बदला लेने की सोची और फ्रैंक पर हमला कर दिया. पर फ्रैंक ने उन्हें पीट पीट कर उनकी हड्डी पसली एक कर दी और उन्हें धम से समझा दिया कि इस इलाके का असली गुंडा कौन है. खैर फिर वो दोबारा से पंथर का पीछा करने लगा. वहीं दूसरी और पंथर फ्रैंक के घर तक पहुंच गया था. घर में अंबर मौजूद थी और पंथर ने उसे धमकी देखा कहा कि अगर उसने पंथर की छिपाई हुई पेनड्राइव उसे नहीं दी तो वो सबको मार डालेगा. At that time, Frank came to save everyone, and a terrible fight started between them. While fighting, they came out of the house and saw the opportunity. Amber jumped on the Panther. At the same time, Frank hit the Panther and killed him. Finally, the police arrested the Panther, and soon, with the help of the evidence found in the pen drive, Williams was also caught. Due to the pen drive, the truth of Panther and William had come out in front of the whole country. Finally, he was jailed, and Frank, Amber, and Martin were happy together. If you liked the video, then like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.